رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح يا فتاح يا فتاح. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم الأمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, it's a great blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given me and you the ability and tawfiq to participate in this gathering, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this gathering a source of guidance for all of us, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this gathering one of the means of our entry into Jannah. Almost 5 weeks ago, we started a new chapter in our Seerah series, and this chapter was about the marriage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha and the rebuilding of the Kaaba. In our first session, we learned how Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was introduced to Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha through her elder sister. In the second session, we learned how Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to take charge of her caravans to Syria, which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam accepted. And when Prophet ﷺ came back, he came back with multiple prophets, which increased the emotions of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha for Rasulullah ﷺ. In our third session, we learned how indirectly Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha sent a proposal to Rasulullah ﷺ through one of her slaves. And then eventually Rasulullah ﷺ proposed Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, and their nikah was performed. In our fourth session, we understand and we try to understand what was the age of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha at the time of her marriage. And this discussion was very important because it contains a lot of material that we can use in order to define how Islam empower women. And that's what we learned in that session, in our fourth session. In our fifth session, we spoke about the blessings of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha and the kind of love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had for Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. Inshallah, in tonight's session, we will be talking about the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like I mentioned a hadith in our last session, in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned all form of loyalties of Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. One of the things that he mentioned in that hadith was وَرَزَقَنِيَ اللَّهُ أَوْلَادَهَا is حَرَّمَنِي أَوْلَادَ النِّسَاءِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with children only through Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, and He didn't give me children through anyone else. So Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha has this privilege, has this blessing. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, together they had 6 children, at least 6 children. Why I'm saying at least, inshallah I will clarify in few minutes, but at least they had 6 children together. Their first child, his name was Al-Qasim. It's important that we remember his name, because Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's kunya is Abul Qasim. In Arab tradition, in Arab culture, the kunya of a father is based on the name of the first child. So Prophet ﷺ's first child name was Al-Qasim. That's why his kunya was Abul Qasim. It is said about Al-Qasim that he was born in the days of Jahiliyyah. He was born before the revelation began. And it is also said about Al-Qasim that he had reached the age where boys, or when boys could ride on the camel or could climb on the camel, which means that he was 6, 7 or 8 years old, and then he passed away. And this is all what we have about Al-Qasim in the books. This is the only thing that we know about. Not even one story has been preserved about Al-Qasim, except that he was 6, 7 or 8 years old before he passed away. And then Prophet ﷺ had Zainab, and then he had Ruqayya, and then he had Kulthum, and then he had his youngest daughter, Fatima, radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So 4 daughters. After Al-Qasim, 4 daughters. Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima. And then finally, Prophet ﷺ had his final son, had his last son with Khadija radiyallahu ta'ala anha, and his name was Abdullah. Now there are some people who say that Prophet ﷺ had At-Tahir and At-Tayyib. So they add 2 more to make it 8. That's why I said in the beginning that at least they had 6 children together. But there are some other people who think that Prophet ﷺ, or who are of the view that Prophet ﷺ had At-Tahir, At-Tayyib, so they make it 8. But the strongest position is that Prophet ﷺ only had 6 children. His final or his last son, Abdullah, had 2 nicknames, At-Tahir and At-Tayyib. At-Tahir means the pure one, and At-Tayyib means the pure one. So these are the nicknames that Prophet ﷺ had given to his last child, whose name was Abdullah. And he died in infancy. He died when he was born when the revelation began, and he died in Islam. But of course, 4 daughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they lived to maturity, they all were married. But in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he buried 3 daughters with his own hands. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, out of all of his 3 daughters, he has buried with his own hands. The only daughter who outlived him was Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. And even to Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, on his deathbed, he said something to Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. She started crying. And when she started crying, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw her. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called her again, because of course this is the daughter of Rasulullah. Prophet loved his daughter, just like any father can love his daughter. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved his daughter. So when she started crying, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called her again. And then Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam whispered something in her ears. And Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha began to laugh. After Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, after many months, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha requested Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha to tell me about that conversation. What did Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say to you in your last conversation that you had with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha confessed, and she said that first he told me that I am going to die. And I cannot bear the pain that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is leaving us. So I started crying. And then when he saw me crying, because he's my father, he called me again. And he said it to me that out of all of my family members, you will be the first one to come and meet me in paradise. Out of all of my family members. So I began to laugh, meaning that I'm going to die soon. After Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the first person in his family that would die, it will be me. That's what Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam meant, that you are the first person who is going to come and meet me. So she started laughing, and this is so true that after Prophet sallallahu, she just lived for a few months after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then she passed away as well. There is this one comment, and I promise you I won't take more than 10 minutes, but I have to make this comment today. I was thinking about doing this discussion later on, but tonight I have to do this discussion. A lot of brothers have come and they have discussed their problems, and they are really heartbroken, and they are very sad, and they are very depressed. So there is this something that I want to share with you based on the incidents of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it seems and feels like he is facing the most traumatic problems one after the other. You know, because the most traumatic thing that can happen to a child is to lose his parents. And the most traumatic thing that can happen to a parent is to lose his child. And this is so true. There is no musibah on the face of this earth that is more painful than these 2 things. As a parent, you all brothers know, all of you brothers know, who are parents here, you can understand that there is nothing more painful to you than to lose your child. And as a child, the most traumatic thing, the most painful thing, we don't remember our experiences. We don't. We forget about our this younger phase of our life. It happened to me when I was a child. My parents took me to this festival. We used to have this defense festival on 6th of September in Lahore. Those of you who are from Lahore, who are familiar from Lahore, you must know that there is a festival that takes place every year in Lahore in Fortress Stadium, where they exhibit their weapons and arms and ammunition, and how did Pakistan win battles against India and this kind of stuff. And I was in that festival and I lost my parents. I was lost and I couldn't find my parents. We forget this younger phase of our lives, but if you look at any child, what happens to him when he loses his parents? He starts running around and he just becomes crazy and wild because he cannot see his parents. He becomes worried because conceivably there is nothing that is more painful, more traumatic for that child than to lose the people who love him and take care of him. And that happened to me, I still remember. And if you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is orphaned multiple times. First his father, then his mother, then his grandfather, then his uncle, one after the other. And then he starts losing his children. When he became a father, he started losing his children one after the other. First he lost Al-Qasim, his eldest son, then Abdullah, then even Ibrahim. I don't know if you know about Ibrahim. Ibrahim was born not of his wife. He was born from one of his maid and servant. And you know, in Arabic we call Amma, maid and servant. None of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam other than Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha gave birth. This is the only maid who gave birth to a son, and his name was Ibrahim. But in fiqh wise, a maid's son, if you have a son with a maid, fiqh wise it's a different thing. You cannot literally call him a son. So the maid is called Umm. So it's a long discussion, inshallah, we will have it some other day. But other than Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, none of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam became pregnant. And the only child that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had, other than Khadija, was Ibrahim, and it was through one of his maid. Her name was Maria. The name of that maid was Maria. So I was saying that if you look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it feels as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the most tragic things to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in it there is a great wisdom for all of us. For all of us. It feels literally like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the purpose of this life is to be afflicted. That this life is nothing but suffering. And if the best person, best human being who ever walked on the face of this dunya, if he is going through so many trials and tribulations, and who are we, and who are we in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And as a matter of fact, because he was the greatest human being ever walked on the face of this dunya, he will suffer like no one else is suffering. Because in these trials and tribulations, there are a lot of things that happen through trials and tribulation. First and foremost, and here I want your attention now. First and foremost, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is established through trials and tribulation. If you're living a comfortable life, if I'm living a comfortable life, our hearts become hard. When the money is pouring in, health is good, wealth is good, then who cares? Sometimes you pray, sometimes you don't pray. Sometimes you make dua, sometimes you don't make dua. But as soon as your son falls ill, as soon as you lose a job, as soon as some musibah falls on top of you or falls upon you, what happens? And we raise our hands and we start saying, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. It is through these trials and tribulation that your heart become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam needed that kind of closeness to Allah. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him go through all these trials and tribulations. So number one, our relationship is established with Allah through trials and tribulations. Number two, it is through these trials and tribulations that servitude comes in our life. We truly understand that who are we and who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we only understand this when we go through trials and tribulations. Number three, when we go through trials and tribulation, patience will come in our life. Definitely, patience will come in our life. And as a Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is going to need patience. Actually, he will need to have the utmost patience, because he will be dealing with different kinds of people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him go through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala afflicted him with the biggest calamities so that that kind of patience can come into his life. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him. Now this is the fourth reason. Number one, our relationship with Allah. Number two, the servitude comes in our life. Number three, patience comes in our life. Number four, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him through all these hardships so that his heart can become soft. His heart can become soft. When you live in poverty, then you can feel and understand the feelings of all those people who are poor people. But if you live a comfortable life, if you live in luxury, you will never be able to connect with all these people who are less fortunate people. You will never be able. It's not a coincidence that if you look into the books of hadith, Prophet ﷺ has so many hadiths about orphans. So many hadiths. And there is this beautiful hadith, and I never get enough of it. Never, ever. Whenever I get a chance, whenever I get a time, I always share it with the people. Prophet ﷺ said, Sahih hadith, authentic hadith, mentioned in all the books of hadith. Prophet ﷺ said, if you cannot feed poor, if you cannot give anything to the poor, then at least rub his hair and make dua for him. Be gentle to him. Because he himself was an orphan. He knows what it feels to be an orphan. He knows how it feels like. So the commandment comes that at least if you cannot give anything to an orphan, rub his hair and make dua for him. Show some tenderness to the orphans. Allah chose all these trials and tribulations for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when he grows up, he bears all these trials and tribulations and he can become a merciful person. You know, our situation is different. Trials and tribulations come in our life and our heart become hard. I've seen a lot of people, they say that when we go through trials and tribulation, why should we help other people? They should go through the same. But this was not Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The purpose of these trials and tribulations is that it can help you to develop mercy. You yourself become a merciful person. And subhanAllah, don't you ever think that Allah will only try you. Allah will only try you. Because Allah tried Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but Allah never tried him beyond his capacity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with both sons and daughters, alhamdulillah. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give him a taste of fatherhood. And so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can silence all those people who want to mock Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not have any children, his enemies could have said many vulgar things about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah blessed him with both sons and daughters. Yes, Allah took his sons away. Allah took his sons away. I understand that. And especially when Allah took his last son away, Abdullah. And subhanAllah, we have done the tafsir of Inna A'tainaka al-Kawthar, Surah Al-Kawthar in one of our tafsir halaqa. And I mentioned it extensively there. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took Ibrahim away when he died, and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in extreme pain, how crude and how callous is this, that Abu Jahl is running through the streets of Makkah. And he's cheering and shouting and screaming out of joy, and he's saying, Qad batara Muhammad, Qad batara Muhammad. The Muhammad's son has died. Muhammad's progeny has been cut off. Can you imagine this? Muhammad's son has died and Muhammad's progeny has... Because for Arabs, the only thing that matters was a male child. If you don't have a male child, then you should better have nothing. If you don't have a male child, you should better have nothing. You should better be sterilized. That's how they used to think. So when Prophet ﷺ's last son passed away, he's shouting and screaming and he's celebrating and he's running through the streets of Makkah and saying, Qad batara Muhammad, Qad batara Muhammad. And can you imagine, your son just passed away and your worst enemy is enchanting such kind of slogans. He's running through the streets of Makkah and is insulting you in this kind of manner. Can you imagine the pain? That's why we have the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I was mentioning it the other day. Beautiful hadith, because the month of Ramadan is coming, so inshallah it will encourage us to do the zikr of Allah. Imam Hakim in his book Al-Mustadrik, he mentioned this hadith on the authority of Abu Salma. He said upon one occasion, Prophet was sitting with his companion and he said, Bakh, bakh. Bakh, bakh in Arabic means wah, wah. How great, how great. He said, how great are 5 kalimat. No, not 5 kalimat. How great bi khamsin are 5 things. أثقلهن في ميزان الله, that they are very heavy in the scales of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are those 5 things? Number 1, subhanallah. Number 2, alhamdulillah. Number 3, la ilaha illallah. And number 4, Allahu Akbar. And when you think about these 4 things, these 4 things are the azkar of Allah, right? Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah, astaghfirullah, sallallahu alayhi. All of these are azkar. So he said 5 things. 4 things he mentioned with regards to the azkar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then finally he said, those parents who show patience over the death of their young child. Because he went through that kind of stuff. He went through that kind of sacrifice. The parents who show patience over the death of their young child. These 5 things. They are the most heavy things in the scale of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine the pain that he is going through. The pain he is going through, and his enemy is enchanting and he is celebrating and he's saying, Qad batara Muhammad, Qad batara Muhammad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to send down revelation to console Rasulullah. He was in such a pain that Allah has to send down revelation. We all know that surah by heart. Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say that these 3 verses are more beloved to me than the entire world. Because the time when Allah sent down these revelation was the time when I was going through extreme pain. You know, we always complain and whinge. We never look at the example of Rasulullah. He should be the role model for all of us. I fail my car test and I instantly get depressed. And I start thinking that this is the biggest trial in my life. This is the biggest tribulation in my life. We need to look into our life and then look at Rasulullah sallallahu, what he went through. Today no one is enchanting or no one is celebrating the death of our children. You know, today no one is insulting us. I remember another story, a youngster was standing on the mountain called, I can't remember the name of that mountain, but it's in the plain of Arafat. And he said, I was standing there, it was before Islam, and I saw this man, he's going through tent to tent, and he's going through door to door, and he's asking everyone, Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihun, say la ilaha illallah and become successful. And someone are throwing stones at him, someone are spitting at him, someone insulting him, someone swearing at him. But relentlessly, he's going through door to door, from one door to another door, telling everyone, begging everyone, la ilaha illallah tuflihun, say la ilaha illallah and become successful. And at the end of the day, he gets tired, he sits down, and he saw his daughter running towards him. And his daughter ran towards him. She's crying because he can see his father. She's crying, and he cleans the face of his daughter. He wipes the tear of his daughter, and he says, Beta, don't worry, inshallah, your father, Allah will make your father successful. And this young man who was standing on the mountain, he asked his father, who is this person? And he said, this is Muhammad. Went through these kinds of stuff. So he used to say, these 3 verses, they are more beloved to me than anything else. Inna a'atayna kal kawthar. We have given you al-kawthar. Kawthar means many things. It can mean paradise. It can mean everything that is in the paradise. It can mean the river of the... There are different interpretations of al-kawthar. We have given you al-kawthar. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ. So you should pray to your Rabb and you should sacrifice. Inna sha'niyaka huwa al-abtar. And don't you worry. Indeed, your opponents, indeed the people who oppose you, they are the ones who are cut off from everything. They are saying, you are cut off. The people who follow you, they will flourish. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرًا. You are the one whose rank is already been raised. Don't worry about yourself. Don't worry about what your enemies. Your enemies, abtar, they are the ones who are cut off from every good thing. And subhanAllah, even today, when you think about the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though he had no son to carry his name, he had no son to carry his name. And you think about Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. To this day, the only people who mention the name of Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl are the people who despise him, who despise them and hate them the most. To this, in the entire world, the people who know the name of Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl are the Muslims. They are the only ones who know the name of Abu Jahl. And they always mention the name of Abu Jahl because they hate them the most and they despise them the most. They want nothing to do with them. That's what Allah tries to say about Inna sha'niyaka huwa al-abtar. What kind of legacy they left behind and what kind of legacy you are leaving behind. There are many other reasons, inshallah not today, but there are many other reasons, there are many other hikmah and wisdom. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not allow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to have sons? Inshallah, this discussion we will have in our next session. It's an important discussion. And just because a few brothers, alhamdulillah, it came in my mind, it's an important discussion, and I think it's a suitable time for us to do this discussion. That why didn't, because people ask this question, especially non-Muslims, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to have sons? What are some of the wisdoms that we can learn in this aspect of the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So if I can encourage all of you brothers kindly to make some time, come and participate in our next session as well. Inshallah, hopefully it will be very beneficial for all.